All right, so continuing our talk mostly about lead acid batteries, we come down to charging. So there are two charging methods. Two methods of charging. And those two methods would be, all right, we'll start with constant current. And what is constant current?
Current stays the same, voltage can fluctuate.
Okay, so current is set. Is set and remains the same or constant. And voltage will fluctuate. Will fluctuate to maintain there we go, to maintain the set voltage, the set amperage. Problems with this particular method is that you have to really kind of babysit it. You have to be very careful with it, because if you're not watching it, then you can get a runaway on it. Oh, my words. What would happen is if you set it at even 5 amps and maybe a dead battery would start out, we'll say it's like a 12 volt battery, 5 amps. It may start out at a pretty low voltage to give you that. And then eventually the voltage is going to kick up higher and higher and higher to give you that 5 amps. And it could feasibly, it's like, hey, once 5 amps, you're going to get to 14, then 15, then 16. And it's going to keep on going. And meanwhile, what's happening to the battery? It is bubbling, it is getting hot, it is not healthy for it. And then you overheat the battery, then the plates start to warp in there, and then they short out, and then the cell is dead, and so you just ruin the battery. Although some people will say this is a great way to clean the battery, blast off that sulfate.
I want to know, did that guy actually ever successfully clean a battery like that?
That I don't know.
Maybe a couple of times. Losing a little bit of acid.
Yeah. Let's see. So you'd have to use caution with that. And it is not necessarily the preferred. And then we have constant potential. Constant potential. That is constant voltage. Constant voltage. Almost did it. Constant voltage. So voltage remains the same. And amps will fluctuate. All right, so I set the battery at 14.2 volts and it's pretty dead. What am I going to see for amperage?
20 to 30.
Something high, 30, 20, depends on the battery. And then as that battery takes a charge, you can actually see it move pretty fast. 25, 20, 15, 10, 5, and it'll set at 5 for a while. A little bit later it's 4, a little bit later it's 3. Eventually it'll roll down to 1 or a little less than 1. And so do you have to be careful with this method so much? No, not really.
Initially, at least, right?
Yeah, initially I would pay attention to that. You know, loosen up the caps, make sure it's venting nicely, but this is fine. What does the aircraft do with the battery? What does the battery get inside the aircraft?
Constant voltage.
Constant current.
Constant, or,
Oh, we got to know this.
well, it's putting out 14 volts, 14 point some volts, so, and that's going back into the battery at kind of a, I guess it's going back into the battery at AC.
This is how the battery is charged in the aircraft.
Did I say constant current or did I say constant
I think you said current. I don't know.
voltage?
We'll just say you're wrong. Whatever, it was wrong. So this is how the battery's charged in the airplane. This is pretty much how all aircraft charge the battery. All. Big ones, little ones, fat ones, skinny ones. Tall ones, short ones. This is how it's going to get charged in the aircraft. All right, so I get in the airplane, turn on the master switch, and all the stuff comes on. All the panels, radios, TV screens, beacons going, flashers are flashing. You shouldn't have all that much load on. And then you're kind of writing your flight plan down, getting your seat situated, make sure the headsets are working, tune in, some Top Gun music into your headset. And then you decide to start the aircraft. And, whoa, or it's a hot day and it's a fuel injected aircraft and it takes you 5 minutes of cranking to get the thing going, which is not unusual. But anyway, it finally lights off and the battery is now pretty well dead. So you look over the ammeter and you're going to see the ammeter is
Flat down.
it is way over on the side. It is 20 some amps going into that battery. And just watch it for just a minute or two and it'll start working its way up. And then eventually in mid-flight, you look over at it and the needle this is 0, and it's always about 1 needle width off of 0 to the draw side. So what is that telling me? I should say the positive side. So that tells me that, and remember, an ammeter, the way they're almost always wired, it's telling you what's happening to the battery. So if I have an ammeter, and I kind of need like 2 screens, because every time I start drawing on it, it screws things up now. So we have the ammeter, we have 0, and we'll say this is plus 20, and over here is negative 20. And then we have the needle. When I start the airplane up, it's going to be way over here. Because why?
Because it's being charged.
Battery's being charged. And then mid-flight, I look over and it's right about here. Not at 0, but slightly on the other side of 0. So what's happening?
Still charging a little bit, very lightly.
Very lightly charging. Well, what happens if I turn on the landing lights and strobe lights and cigarette lighter and all kinds of stuff?
Nothing, because the generator's taking care of all that.
Probably look just like that. Generator's taking the load. Just doesn't tell me what the generator load is. Tells me what the battery's doing. And the battery's just, it's small little load right there, and the generator's handling. What's that?
Let's take the throttle.
Well, what happens if I pull the throttle all the way back to idle?
Yeah.
Well, at that point, it's probably going to come over here to the discharge area
Yeah.
because generator can't handle it. And
Yeah.
in
So
this,
then what, it draws from the battery?
Then it draws from the battery.
Negative?
So I remember the first time I did my night flight training in the Cessna 140, which has a generator, not an alternator, and way before LED lights. And I don't know if a self-respecting person put LED lights in an antique aircraft, but anyway. Do you have it? You don't have battery anyway, no. Or lights.
Well, we have lights.
Okay.
They look identical. The LEDs look identical. to that.
Nice. I want to get some. Anyway, so we go out flying at night, turn on the lights, everything's fine, pull the power back, and whoa! I mean, it's just the old generators. They have a very high coming in speed. It means they got to be turning fast to work. You just see that needle discharge all the way to the other side, and you'd come in, you'd land, and taxi around, and by the time you get back the run up, you can see the lights are starting to get a little bit more orange. Then you take the runway full throttle, then they come back on, and then the battery would charge back up, and you come around, do it again. So that's what you can expect out of that. But anyway, so the ammeter tells you what's happening with the battery. Battery is charged what method in an aircraft?
Constant potential.
Constant potential, constant voltage. All right, so we don't have to babysit it. We don't have to worry about it. It's fine sitting there in the airplane. Let's see, it's how the battery's charged. This is the preferred method. Which is good. This is the preferred charge method. lead acid. Lead acid batteries. That's the preferred method. So guess what? That's what they're going to get. So they're pretty happy in the airplane. Let's see. Preferred method. Yeah, we talked about that. Okay. So that's more or less everything that you need to know about lead acid batteries. What are some of the big takeaways from lead acid batteries? What do they hate? What is bad for them?
They need to be discharged for a long period of time.
They hate to be discharged for long periods of time. They do not like that.
They need to be dropped from too high.
They don't like you're dropped on the corner. So, let's see. Aircraft. Your car tends to be run just about every day, at least almost every day, right? Aircraft, some people don't fly them, but maybe once a month, maybe once every 2-3 months. So batteries don't like that. Aircraft tend to, there's always a little load on it. Radio, maybe have some sort of memory, or like my airplane has a clock that's always running off the battery. So you leave it sitting long enough, you come out and the battery's dead, and so that's going to cause what to happen inside the battery?
Corrosion.
Lead sulfate.
Lead sulfate, which is hard to get off, so then the battery doesn't last very long. So to fix this, a lot of people put in what's called a battery tender. I think it's battery minder. The company makes it.
Yeah, battery minder.
Yeah, battery minder.
Trickle charger.
They're pretty expensive for aircraft.
Can you not just use like an automotive tender or maintainer?
Could you? Well, see, these things, they say they're made for an aircraft. There's even STCs out there where you can, put plugs in the aircraft so you can actually plug it in. You are charging it inside the aircraft at that point, which seems to be safe for these little tiny trickle chargers. Could you then just get an automotive one? Because, they make really cheap automotive battery tenders,
Yeah,
marine
just kinda
ones and
sit
stuff.
there.
Most battery tenders that I've seen installed in aircraft are like $20 off the shelf at the auto parts store, and they just leave them in the aircraft.
Yeah.
I was
Man,
like, okay, that's
That's not airworthiness now.
yeah, it comes with that
Well,
little-
okay. So if you go to the auto parts store and you get one for $20 and you put it on your aircraft battery, and then when you go to fly it, you remove the whole system, that's completely legal. If something stays on the aircraft, it's no longer legal. So it's these battery minders that they sell in like aircraft sprues for certified aircraft. They're like $500.
But that's meant to stay on there.
It's meant to stay on and clamp in, and I believe that some of
Those are
them,
really nice.
yeah,
Got
you
the
even
proper cable.
you cut a
gauge
hole and
yep.
yep. So they're, like I said, $500 or more. So I don't have one. Why? One, I don't want to cut a hole in my airplane. Two, I don't like the cable running inside I like to have my airplane closed up tight. I want spiders, mice, snakes getting in there. So, and for $500, I can buy a new battery. So it's like, well, it's like, and just fly it once a week. So that's my solution. So anyway, okay, so we got all that. Let's see. And we talked about all.
Torturous thing, having to go fly.
I know. I hate it. All right. What's a VRLA battery?
Valve regulated.
Lead acid. All right. So I just want to throw this one down here. So let's see. So I'm going to say use caution when charging VRLA. I didn't realize I didn't really have much notes on the VRLA batteries. Okay, so valve regulated lead acid batteries, and I'm going to just have to go, I think, off notes here. 10, 11. Yeah, I don't have notes. All right, so they are kind of a maintenance free. So, maintenance free.
Is that a term the FAA is all right with?
No, that is a term that I just threw out here. So by maintenance free, I mean cannot add water. That is it. Other than that, the maintenance is very much identical. You have certain hours you have to meet, and when you hit those hours or calendar time, you have to take the battery out. You have to do a measured discharge. So you're still doing the measured discharge tests and at least a visual inspection, but there's no hydrometer test. There's no, no hydrometer test or no adding water. So they're a different type of construction. I would call them like a semi-flooded. Again, my words, because it depends on the construction. They could have absorbed glass mats. So that's AGM. It was a type of battery, actually, absorbed glass mat battery.
Is that what that means?
What's that? AGM, absorbed glass mats. So rather than having this flooded battery where fluid is sloshing around in there, they have these mats that act more like wicks, and it takes the electrolyte and stores it in those. So it's almost like a dry battery, but it's not quite. Because, like I said, I've opened up the VRLAs, and you can see fluid down in there, but not up top, near the top at all. It's just like, wow, look way down in there.
They're like wicks.
Yeah, so the glass mats will act like a wick to pull it up in next to the plates.
What is the valve?
Valve regulated.
Valve regulated. What is a valve?
Okay, so we're going to talk about the valve.
Okay.
You need this so it doesn't explode.
So what they do is, as the battery, because it's still a lead acid battery, as it charges, it's going to outgas. Well, they've sealed up the battery and put valves in it, valve regulated, so it regulates the pressure in the battery. The battery is going to pressurize, and it's going to swell and bulge. That's normal. So it swells up and bulges. I can't remember the PSI, something like 3 PSI. I could be completely wrong on that, so I'm not going to write it down. They'll swell up and then release a little bit of the gas just to keep it from exploding. So the idea is they want to keep all of the gas and fluid contained in the battery and only release what they absolutely have to. And that's where the maintenance free part comes in. So I say use caution when charging these VRLA. At one point I had some notes. I mean, it says it here, but I just haven't refreshed these with the newer maintenance manuals. Will tell you that you should only, at one point it said only use an approved VRLA charger. And the reason why is because the amperage is very low on those. So when you're doing this type of battery, I would be extremely cautious about high amp ratings on it. So you want to stay away from that. What happens if I use a high amp rating when charging?
It's gonna bubble and it's gonna pressurize, and the vents might not off gas.
Yeah, it just, even if it works properly, it's very abusive to that type of battery. To use my words, it's more of a slower charging battery. So I think it would like a slower charge. But, you put it in the aircraft, and like I said, you have a big load, you start it, then you're going to look over, you're going to see a high amp draw, it's all going in the battery. What about that? It's a very short period of time. So for a very short period of time, it'll take a high amperage, come back down to normal. That's fine. They're designed to do that. I would say it really is not a good idea to put it on 25 amps and leave it there for a long time. Although, gosh, was it the Concord one I was reading or the Gill? I was reading one of them, and it said something about the amount of amps that it could actually take was just phenomenal. I'm like, that seems like a misprint. It was a lot. So anyway.
The VRLA batteries, you would want to use constant current method for that? When it's
No. Well, okay. Depends on how dead it was and what I was doing. But still, what is the preferred charging method for lead acid? Constant potential. So you could just turn the potential down a little bit if you're trying to be very ginger, bringing it up. But
kind of watch it, make sure the amps don't go.
yeah,
Because if it's going too high, then maybe
back it down, back the voltage down a little bit. It's nothing wrong with putting 6 volts onto a 12-volt battery if it's totally dead. That doesn't know the difference.
Yeah,
It's take longer. Yeah. All right. So if you see a VRLA battery that's bulging and kind of round looking, starting to,
It's
what do you do? It's normal. That's what they do. They bulge. They get unsquare. That's just very normal for them.
Make sure
And the valve things you showed us yesterday with little holes in it, that's what goes onto the...
They're going to be down below. You can't see them.
okay.
They're very smooth on top.
Okay. But that was from the VRLA battery, right?
These?
Or no, you had what's it that?
These are lead acid. These are flooded.
I thought you showed a different piece that just had the 2 little holes on it.
That's the top of this that I broke.
Oh,
So you
yeah,
can see.
I just saw the flat piece.
Yeah.
So
Let's see.
if the valves off gas, do they also let a specific amount back in when they start to cool down, or when they start to so they off gas, that's while it's charging, right?
Yes. So they'll swell and release some of the gas.
And then so what happens is when it stops charging, does it try to draw that anything back
Oh, then it kind of will.
So
I
it
don't
seems
know.
like does it ever draw anything back in from the atmosphere?
That I don't know.
So that it just
I mean, I
always
could
off gases.
Make up something, but I
Well, that's why they have it at, like you said, at least a certain pressure, so
Yeah.
that when it comes back in, it's not gonna try to suck it.
Oh, so it kind of like
Probably just more
maintains-
one-way check valve.
Yeah. That's what I envisioned it. So, here's the battery. You can see it's got the lugs up here for the positive, negative. I like that. And the torque is right on top. And you can see that it's just very flush up here. If you take a screwdriver and you try hard enough, you can pop this top off. And then once you get that top off, there's like, if I remember correctly, there's like a mat there, I think, which absorbs some of the acid if it came out. And then below that, you can pry off another set of caps that allows you to look inside the battery. So, yeah, when my battery goes bad, I'll bring it in. We'll take it apart. But hopefully that doesn't happen anytime soon. So, all right, VRLAs. Valve regulated sealed lead acid non-spillable aircraft battery. So it's a VRSLANSAB.
Non-spillable.
Yes.
Try that.
And then the thing I like about that is put right there, 22 amp hour capacity. So, it says right on there with the C1 rate, 10 volts. Okay. All right, I think that's all I have about lead acid. No, I didn't want to do that at all. All right, so let's talk about the NiCads. So I want to make sure I got everything else. Charging VRLA batteries. Rapid charging of VRLA will damage them. Precautions, we already covered this for safety gear. Negative is on first or last?
Just put it on last.
Negative is on last. First off, do not charge in the aircraft. Make sure vents are open. Clean up electrolyte spills with baking soda. Keep away. Oh, okay. Keep away from NiCad batteries. Let's bring this up now. It is in your Q&As. I think it's in your textbook. It's just it's always been said, never service NiCad and lead acid batteries in the same room, because one is an acid, one is a base. You cross-contaminate, you neutralize them. More and more stuff is coming out recently that says it is absolutely false. There's never been a case of this happening. Stop worrying about it. Now they're actually selling self-contained battery servicing containers, like shipping containers. Their companies are making them for servicing batteries, and it says right on there, suitable for both NiCad and lead acid in the same room. Stop believing the don't mix. But it's like putting a battery on the floor. Somebody's don't do it, because somebody will say, "Oh, you idiot! You should
The manual
know."
says it too, so
Huh?
The manual.
Which manual?
The SAFT NiCad battery says never to store.
Yeah, it's the
So-
Saft one. But so just don't. It's not worth the argument. But just so you know, it's not like, oh my God, I was walking by a lead acid battery with my NiCad the other day, and that must be what made it go bad.
It almost exploded.
Okay, we did talk about new batteries may come dry without electrolyte. So what do?
You add the electrolyte.
Add the electrolyte. All right, battery will usually be pre-charged. Show voltage once electrolyte is added. Follow instruction carefully. Metal bond. Make sure the vents are good. Battery box, cracks, corrosion. Paint with?
Alkaline
Yeah,
resistant paint.
I just call it acid-proof paint. All right. NiCads. Nope, I just want one. Oh, I know. One. There we go. Got a one. All right. Nickel cadmium. Nickel cad. Did it do it right? Yeah. Or NiCd. Nope, I didn't think I'd get lucky on that one. NiCd or NiCad. There. Either which one, or NiCad. Batteries. Are they going to be storage? Are they going to be primary or secondary?
Secondary.
All right. Or storage battery, also known as secondary. All right, what about them? Why did they use these?
Because the voltage output is very stable for most of the battery life.
Okay, yep. Well, we'll start with this. Have better, oops, I wanted power to weight ratio. It means for the amount they weigh, you get more power than a NiCad battery.
NiCad or lead acid?
We're talking about NiCad now.
Yes.
So a NiCad has more power per weight than the lead acid. Lead acid's going to weigh a little bit more, not give you as much power because it's made with lead, literally in the name. Have better power to weight ratio. CCV, which stands for? Yep, is nearly constant. However, much more expensive.
Yeah, we found that out.
What did you find out?
Well, we found a battery, me and Alex, and it was like $14,500.
Okay, it's been several years since I did this, but I found a Gill 7639-27 lead acid battery. So I found a Gill lead acid. And the most expensive one I found was $2,200. And this has been a couple of years, let me tell you. And that went into Falcon 10. Most expensive I could find. I wrote typical small batteries about 200. Well, typical small batteries now getting closer to 3, 4. I think, what did I say? I paid for mine 5. And then the NiCad, most NiCad, I don't know what that's going to come up. NiCad batteries. On SkyGeek, that's where I went. SkyGeek were SkyGeek 6 to 15,000. So that was typical. So they're a lot more expensive. They are usually used on turbine aircraft. Oops. I don't want that. Usually found on turbines. On turbine aircraft due to higher capacity. Needed for starting.
More expensive to maintain too, correct?
Yes, I was going to talk about that. So back when I was in the field, for the most part, lead acid batteries were ignored. If it worked, it worked. Came in for annual, you put some water in it if it needed it, slap it on the side, and throw it back out. You didn't do this measured discharge test. You guys are learning quite a bit more about batteries than even a lot of shops are doing. When I was doing my little thing for COVID and working in a shop, and we had aircraft come in for annual, I'm like, well, pulling the battery out, got to do the measured discharge test. I'm sorry, the what? Measure discharge test, like it says in the manual. We don't do that. If it worked when it came in, it'll work when it go out. All right, you're signing it. However, that was not the case going way back when I was in the field, and we actually were a service center for batteries, and we were doing all the batteries for Cessna Sky Station. And it was a very labor-intensive and expensive thing to work on these NiCad batteries. Because of their construction, they're so different in what they look like. That's not the picture I wanted at all. I want this one right here. They're very, very different. So they come in, first of all, a nice little metal box like that with little quick release handle or locks on it. And you can see there's where you're going to connect it to the aircraft. You have a temperature sensor right here, and when you open up the box, that is what you see. All of the little cells that you see floating around that we're now using in our lab. So each one of these little batteries has to be maintained. So we would have to do, you didn't just do a measured discharge test. You have to completely and totally discharge this thing. And then you have to put grounding straps between each battery and bring it all the way down to 0 volts and slowly service it, clean it, pack them back in. And then you'd have to do a very slow and monitored recharge because these batteries had a tendency to reverse polarity inside themselves. So what should be the positive and the negative would sometimes in one particular cell go, no, I don't want to be that way anymore. So you'd have to then deal with that particular cell. The water level in this is so much different. In a lead acid, really, you just kind of pop the top off if you now have a flooded still, then you fill it up to within
1/8 inch split ring.
the split ring or up to the split ring, and slap the caps on and you call it a day. This right here, NiCads, the water level fluctuates with the rate of charge. And if you got good enough, you could almost put like a little marker on it and say, if the water level's here, it's full. If it's here, it's empty or it's discharged. It doesn't really work that way, but as the battery charges, water seems to come from nowhere. Electrolyte seems to come from absolutely nowhere and start filling up the battery. In fact, we had one assistant helping me with these batteries one year, and I wasn't paying attention, went in there and filled up all of our NiCads and then put them on the charger. And it came around, hey, they're all overfilling. I'm like, you didn't have electric water, did you? Yes. So now we got a big jar in the tool room full of electrolyte out of those batteries. I'm like, well, thank you for that. So, all right. So very different. So they're usually found on the turbine. All right, and so I had mentioned that piston aircraft start just like a car would, more or less, although cars nowadays, you just push a button and it goes to the auto start sequence. Turbines are more like that, where you can hit a button and it goes to the auto start sequence, but the first thing it's going to do is spool up the turbine engine to 10%. So it's got to get it going at least 10% of its rated RPM before it adds the fuel and takes off on its own. Then the battery can then be disconnected. So it's a long process and a pretty huge battery draw to get that done. So that's why the NiCads. I have in my notes fewer charge discharge cycles. Things are changing so rapidly. I also put memory effect. I really tried to find information to explain where the memory effect comes in. So memory effect is, and I remember like really cheap tools when the battery operated tools first came out. They were kind of like that. And what it was is like if you took a drill and you always took your drill, put on a battery, and you drilled 4 holes, right? And you're like, I don't need it anymore. Just take the battery off, put in a charger, right? Then the next day, just 4 more holes or whatever. And you used it just a few minutes. Well, before long, when you went to use it, well, now I got to drill 16 holes today. It would do 4 holes and die. It's like, well, that's the memory. That's what it's used to. So So we used to take tools like that and discharge them all the way down, then recharge them. Sometimes they would just break them anyway, but I tried to find where this memory effect is happening with NiCads. I don't know, I couldn't find any good information, but they say that.
So that's not so much a thing anymore, you're saying, with the newer batteries?
I'm not seeing it. I couldn't find enough information to stand up here and go, this is what it is, this is a thing.
Yeah, I've heard people would say that like they run their drills and shit like that until they're dead.
Yeah, I ruined a perfectly good one doing that. Ruined the battery right out of it.
Oh, really?
Wouldn't charge after that at all. So.
Like a Makita or whatever, like a battery?
Yeah.
So, NiCads are also better for turbine-based aircraft because they handle that deep discharge.
That huge, and then the closed current voltage stays the same.
Yeah.
As we're lead acid, you start to spool up that engine, you're going to go, 12, 11, 10, 9, 8, and this is going to go up. Well, they're almost all 28 volts. So
28 all the way until
24 all the way until it's like, okay, now I'm dead. Yeah, it just happens that fast. So you're going to get the voltage you need all the way through. So you don't have a dragging start or something like that going on. Let's see, construction. I don't want to write all of this stuff, but I showed you, well, we'll do some of it because this is somewhat interesting. And that is a 2. 2 is construction. Construction, they are obviously multiple cells. Multiple cell battery. Usually I have 19 or 20 cells for a 24 volt battery. Let's see, I didn't write it in my notes here, but the voltage is 1.25 volts per cell. Now you will see a lot of stuff when you're doing this project in the manual that talks about 1.5, 1.55 volts per cell. Where does that come from? Yeah, we do that. 1.55 volts? Question mark. What's that going to make it? Nope. Well, volt. That is when on a charger. When on the charger. That's what it's talking about. You're actually measuring a voltage when it's on the charger.
So, what's 1.25? That's the voltage?
That is the voltage per cell.
Nominal?
Yeah, it's really close to that.
And then this is 20 cells for 624 battery?
19 or 20 cells for a 24 volt battery. Which gives you about 1.25 volts per cell. In the manual, it does talk about a 1.55 or 1.5 volts per cell. That is literally when the charger is connected and on. That's what you're going to end up seeing when it's complete. So what's the voltage going to be when I take the charger off?
1.25.
1.25. It's going to go back down. What's that? I know. We should just slow down. All right, they're all encased in a metal box. You saw the picture. I'm not going to write that. Connected with metal straps. Obviously, just like those are metal, those are just lead. These are more like stainless steel. Let me see, active material. The active material is, let me see, positive plate. Nickel salts. The negative plate is cadmium salts. That is the stuff they make those little Easter eggs out of at Easter time.
No wonder they always taste funny.
And there is a separator. Which is nylon with cellophane. And it is possible, since I've written this and the data that I used, may obviously technological advances have, a cellophone.
Cellophane.
Cellophane.
Call me on the cellophane.
Let me see. Yeah. Construction, Cellophane is what I was trying to spell, and that's what I got. Okay, cellophane. All right. So the separator, just like it would be on a lead acid battery, keeps the plates from touching. If the plates touch, short circuits. All right, let's talk about the electrolyte. The electrolyte, we're dead, is actually made out of cookies and bananas. Huh?
And frog legs.
Cookies and bananas. I'm being serious.
Potassium and
I was gonna say potassium.
Well, 70% distilled water and potassium hydroxide. So NiCad, 30% potassium, potassium hydroxide plus 70% distilled water, and everybody knows that potassium is bananas. You got it. Hydrox cookies. And wait a minute. I haven't looked at these slides in a while, but if I'm correct, there's a new version that came out. Yes, hydroxycut. So I'm old school. I go with the cookies and bananas for the potassium and the hydrox. Do you guys know hydrox cookies? They're obviously I think they're the original Oreo. They don't taste as good. They're a little bit harder. Somebody brought in I did this the next day. They brought in a thing of hydrox cookies for us, and they're a little crunchier. Oh, you can have your protein powder. So.
Should I bring that thing of Oreos?
With your gallon of water. That sounds like a gym trip right there.
So, well, this is to say that be careful. Obviously, if you are at home and you eat a banana and a hydrox cookie, you're basically eating a battery of some sort. I don't know. So it could hurt you.
My body is a machine that turns bananas and hydroxycut into a nickel cadmium.
So what is the electrolyte in a lead acid battery? 70% water. 30. I said lead acid.
Oh, lead acid.
So it's 30%. Sulfuric.
Yeah.
NiCad, same thing, 70%, but this time potassium hydroxide.
so potassium hydroxide, that's the base.
Although, I don't normally mention it, but I will say this is a test question, and I don't think anybody's ever missed it. So, the things I can teach, I don't know.
Just for
That's-
you.
Prove you wrong.
I get to be number one at something.
Yes. I'm number one. Okay, so the electrolyte, we got that. Okay, so this is. Did you write that down, or I have to write it? So,
I wrote it just like that.
all right. Cookies and bananas. Electrolyte.
I'm gonna answer. It's 30% bananas and Oreos. 70%
I don't know, because my stupid teacher told me that. Okay, so we had.
Is that gonna be an answer? Cookies and bananas.
It probably is. I gotta try and spell this. Potassium hydroxide and 70% distilled water.
Still.
Distilled water. All right. Okay. The reason why you are not supposed to mix NiCads and lead acid battery is because, technically speaking, this would be the opposite of sulfuric acid. So potassium is a base, and so you don't want to mix those. So potassium hydroxide's that's electrolyte's a base. The other one is an acid. When you mix a base and an acid, you get the neutral water. So again, if you're in the Flight of the Phoenix scenario, you guys probably never. It's a movie and a book. I read the book, Flight of the Phoenix. If you actually read books, it's kind of a good book. It's about these guys during, I don't know, World War II-ish in this Sahara Desert in somewhere Africa. They crash a plane. They have to then figure out how to take this crashed plane and make a flyable plane out of the pieces and parts. And so
I've
they're,
seen the movie
Oh yeah, I've seen the movie.
long time ago.
all right, I read the book.
Fly like a navigator.
Okay, anyway, so I always say that. If you're in that situation, you have a lead acid battery and a NiCad battery, you just mix it. Well,
Maybe that's why you crashed.
discharge the lead acid to get it as close to water as possible, then mix it with the, right? And then you'll
Well,
have
if
water.
you, well, I mean, oh yeah.
Okay, don't do
if
that,
You're
right?
trying to
All right.
make a.
Or maybe you
like a-
crashed because you had two different batteries.
Okay, we're good. We're good with that though. That's why you don't mix the two. I don't have to write a bunch of stuff. So okay, specific gravity. Is 1.24 to 1.32, regardless of the state of charge. So in other words, what is a fully charged NiCad battery? What is and what is a fully dead one?
1.24.
There you go. So throw your hydrometer away. It's not going to help you.
You're using it anyway on the
Measure
NiCad.
the specific gravity then if it's, isn't it?
Why bother?
Yeah.
Yeah, you don't.
There's just no need to do that.
Well, you gotta know.
That was the
You
question.
gotta know that it's in between there at least. You know what I mean? Like if you say, well,
I don't think the manual asks you to do that.
But what if you have? Did they ever come dry?
Not that I'm aware of.
Okay. What if you go to run for
I don't know. I never bought a new one.
I don't remember there being an activation part in the.
Yeah. You just change out I think they come filled. All right, let's see. Or it would be the 30%. I just don't know. Let's see. Vent cap. The vent cap. Well, this is kind of a new thing. So, vent cap. Vent cap. Cup. Vent cap. Let's see. Releases gas. Releases gas. So when you get a buildup, it's going to release gas under pressure, like the VRLA, but this one happens to be 10 psi, which is quite a bit, but seals in electrolyte. Sealed in the electrolyte. Very little gassing happens. Very little gassing happens with NiCad. So one of the pros of that, one of the nice things, is that you don't have a venting system for these batteries. So when you look at that metal case, this one had two funky little things. I don't know what they were. You you don't typically find any sort of venting, or if they do, it's little vents on top of the case. But it doesn't attach to anything in the aircraft. It just pop it in, put the quick connect on, you're plugged in, and then you take the temperature probe and put it. So while it doesn't have a venting requirement, it absolutely has a temperature sensor. And the reason why is because NiCads have a tendency to run away. And I don't know, I've got it in here somewhere, which I'll get to, but there's a chemical process happens within them, basically where the separator kind of breaks down and it creates some sort of oxygen, and the oxygen then causes heat within the cell. The heat in the cell creates more of the oxygen, which then creates more heat, which creates more thermal runaway. And so that then starts a chain reaction through the other cells until the thing is just overheated. So on aircraft that have these particular batteries, in the cockpit, there will be a temperature or alarm system for the battery, and also typically a disconnect. So you can disconnect it from the system, because if you catch it early enough, it's really simple how you stop it. Stop charging it. Well, in an aircraft, typical aircraft, my aircraft, if I had to stop charging my battery, I have a master switch. That would do it, but it kills everything else. It's really kind of hard to get out of the airplane to go get it, land and stuff. So as long as you have a disconnect, you're good to go. So let me see, principle of operation. So I don't want to write all of this, because you'd be like, why did you make me do that? So we'll just put operation. Yeah, just like I did with the lead acid, just kind of an overview. Let me see. Discharge. Plates only change. Positive plate and discharge. Yeah, this is just all chemical process that I wrote. We're not going to get into that. Let me see. I'm going to write the highlight. So operation, I will put this as battery discharges electrolyte is absorbed into the plates. And I'd already mentioned that you could actually almost see it, the battery. Well, you can't, because you never know where the electrolyte was. Was it high or low to begin with? But you can fill up charge a battery, and while it's charging, so the typical, the way you deal with these is, and they'll take a lot of amps. I mean, you can look right in the manual. It'll tell you, go ahead and charge it to C1 rate. That's 24 amps. So if it's a 24 amp hour battery, I can put 24 amps in it for how long? An hour, and it's fine with it. And then at the end of an hour, you want a topping charge, which is usually the 0.1 C rate. So that would be 2.4 amps for a period of 4 hours. 4 hours. And then you determine, I should back up. 24 amps you can do for 1 hour. I wouldn't do that if it's my battery, but you can. Book says you can. I'm just always leery of that. And you can tell when it's pretty much full by doing a voltage check on every single cell in the case. And you'll know that they're charged when the voltage reaches
1.5 volts.
About 1.5 volts. Then when it's at the 1.5 volts, it is fully charged. So the electrolyte, in theory, should be all the way to the top. At that point, you're going to use a special tool to either suck out electrolyte or put in some distilled water. And you do it at that point, at the topping charge, once they're fully charged. So what happens if I get my battery, I'm like, I got to charge it. Oh my gosh, it's low on water. Let's fill it up, put it on the charger.
Oh, you're gonna have a blowout.
You're going to have a blowout, as we say.
You're having a jar full of electrolytes.
For the
Yes.
topping charge, don't you do it in the last 15 or 30 minutes of it?
Yes. Yep. Let's see. Water is typically lost, for some reason I circled this. Water is lost by evaporation or overcharged gassing. I don't know why I circled it. Maybe it's important that I mentioned it. I'll put it. Water is generally lost. Evaporation. And I gotta be honest, I don't know how you're gonna get evaporation with a sealed battery that doesn't release anything unless it's 10 psi or over. But
Oh no, it's got to be that the gas can take up more space, right?
or
Like it can compress more. I mean, I don't know. It's got to be, but this is what I think: is that the water doesn't compress, the
right.
gas can. So if you expand, if you turn a lot of that water to gas, it can take up more room.
Yeah, but evaporation means a certain thing.
It doesn't.
That's what
I
evaporation
guess
means.
so, yeah.
Overcharging. What's overcharging gonna do?
Overfill the
Make it
battery
lose
and
water?
spill out.
Heat, expansion. Air's got to go somewhere. There's air on the top. When it gets hot, it's going to expand. It expands. It's going to possibly blow out some of the little bit of the electrolyte.
So those caps got to suck back in then, suck air back in then. They gotta go
to
back.
equalize.
Yeah, to equalize. I'm
No.
kind of like asking. I'm just sort of saying.
I don't know. So if you heat up something, well, it's going to cool back down. Then want to.
Like if there's a low water content in there, and then you start.
Well, especially if you're discharging it and the level goes down maybe a little bit, but not too much.
Well, it's expand. It's like evaporating, so it's coming out. So the water's going.